Alright y'all, so I'm going to go ahead and start ripping some of this stuff off. All the knickknacks that are left over. These sensors, knock sensors, rail here, crossover, coolant crossover, pipe, the ignition coil. We're going to get the valve covers pulled off. Get the spark plugs taken out. I noticed there was quite a bit more water left in it, so I rotated it a few more times. Get all the fluids out. Just all the little coolant that's been trapped inside, so I'm gonna start ripping all this little stuff off and see what we got once we get all these valve covers open, maybe get the heads off. Alright y'all, so first I'm gonna start pulling off all these accessories. I'm gonna get this coolant pipe. It's actually a steam pipe crossover. Get that taken off. Going to get the, I believe, 10 millimeters from the rear. These there's 4 blocks, 2 in the rear, 2 in the front. Just get those whizzed out real quick. I'm using a Milwaukee M12. This is a 3/8 stubby impact wrench. Any type of socket wrench will work. It doesn't have to use power tools. Taking that rear brace off, the driver's side head. Get that moved out of the way, and then I can move on to these ignition coil rails. Again, I have to get the that crossover pipe off first. That bracket was in the way. Then we'll start pulling off the knock sensors, which is they're connected to the steam pipe with just a plastic clip to keep it in place. So that's that steam pipe, steam pipe. Got it out of the way. Now I'm going to get these knock sensors pulled out. When I was pulling these out, I did notice that the protective cover that sits inside of the port, the whole port, whatever we can call it, it was loose. It wasn't. It should be rubber. If I'm not mistaken, they're rubber. And they're kind of molded into that recessed hole. This one was dried out, so that would let me know there was excessive heat along the valley. I was pulling the knock sensors, so I noticed that the connectors were dry. They're pretty dry and stale, so they were cracking as I was trying to get them out, trying to get it out of one piece, but I eventually ended up breaking it. Just kind of gave up and said, let's get it out of there. I'm gonna have to get a new harness for that. Shouldn't be too bad, but had to end up breaking both of them, so it is what it is. I'm gonna get a socket to get these lock sensors pulled out. It was a 24 millimeter, I believe, 24 or 26 millimeter. I believe it was a 24 millimeter to get these knock sensors removed. Just gonna crack them loose with a half-inch socket. Half-inch socket wrench. Now these knock sensors, they're not torqued. They're not torqued down that much. I just I wanted to practice cracking. I'm not sure how long this engine's been sitting. I just wanted to crack everything loose by hand manually first before I started, using impacts on, threads that who knows how long they could have been staled and, mating themselves to the block. Those are the 2 knock sensors there. They were pretty clean. I pulled some out once before, and the rear sensor, it was like pooled. It was sitting in a pool of like oily water. So that was interesting. So here I have a 3/8 electric ratchet, cordless ratchet, what are you gonna call it? It's a Milwaukee as well, Milwaukee Fuel 3/8. I'm just whizzing off these ignition coil rails. They were 10 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was 5 of them. They're kind of they're pointed across the valve cover surface. There's one bottom, one top, one bottom midway, one top midway, and so on and so forth. From left to right, it's a total of 5 of them. Was gonna remove that oil filler neck, but it wouldn't come off. I thought they screwed off, but it wasn't budging, so I just left it on. I was gonna go ahead and remove the valve cover as a whole and just leave it on there. That last 10 millimeter that was close to the filler neck, it was the clearance from my ratchet didn't clear, so I had to get an extension, or 3/8 extension. I believe that was a 6-inch. 6-inch. I'm using all chrome. I'm using all chrome sockets. I'm not using impact sockets. Is not really that warranted with these 10 millimeters and these 8 millimeters that are on this upper this upper end, top end, I guess I want to say. So the actual valve cover fasteners are at 8 millimeters. It's funny because the ignition coil rail and the ignition coils themselves are held on with 10 millimeters, but the valve covers are held on with 8 millimeters. So it's 4 of them from left to right, right to left, whichever way you want to go. Straight line, horizontally. I did notice that I overlooked the 2 spark plugs on this side. This is the passenger side head. I realized I didn't get those 2 spark plugs that were still sticking out, and I didn't want to get into taking the valve cover off and then essentially taking off the rocker arms and forget those spark plugs in that head. I should have done that first, but didn't get to it. I used the 5/8 spark plug socket to take them out, but at first the spark plug socket wouldn't fit over them, because when they removed the ignition coil wires, they must have ripped them off. So the aluminum connector, metal connector, was the tip of it was still on the tip of the spark plug. You can see it there. It was still on the tip of the spark plug, so I had to use some pliers to get those off. I just squeezed them in place, kind of rotated them, wiggled them off till they came off. You can see them there. Just aluminum connector. I believe they're aluminum. Not aluminum. They're metal, whatever. Again, I don't know how long this engine's been sitting, so here I am with the socket wrench ratchet. It's a 3/8 ratchet. Just want to crack these loose, and then I can use my cordless ratchet to whiz them on all the way out. They were pretty bad. They wasn't too bad, but they were pretty bad. They were soaked. There was moisture in them. So this side was the side that endured the head gasket failure on cylinder number 2. So the spark plug in cylinder number 4 and 6 had moisture in them. Moisture and oil were pretty gunked up, so they've been in there quite a while. There was one other plug on this side. I believe it was on the number 5. There was also some broken exhaust manifold studs, header studs, I guess you want to call them, on both sides. I actually had to get those out as well. Then I continued on to getting the head disassembled. Looks like it's actually going to be 3 and 5. Getting that number 3 out. So there's 4 plugs left out of 8, which is weird, but whatever. So I'm getting all this stuff set to a side. I'm trying to keep it as organized as possible. I'm gathering the bolts. I'm actually, you can't see it, it's off camera, but I have a organizer, one of the little tray organizers that has like the little compartments in it. And then I'm just kind of keeping the bolts, all the same bolts or similar bolts, you know, that came off with different components in the same group. So that way I don't lose anything when it goes, you know, when it comes time to putting it back together. Um, I'm gonna move on to this valley cover, but it was so much soil and dirt on it. It wasn't any oil, it was just literally all dirt, just from, you know, the intake, I'm assuming, had never been removed. Or it was like an off-road vehicle. So I'm trying to get the deposits removed before I go removing those bolts, because if you put a socket over uh, a bolt that has deposits or dirt on it, you know, you'll lose your grip when trying to turn it, and you'll just end up just spinning it. That was the oil pressure sensor. It was corroded, so it came off. It just broke off when I was uninstalling it, but whatever. Here I am taking a 10mm to the camshaft position sensor. It's behind the intake manifold, which is in the center of the valley. It's not there, it's already been removed. It's right next to the oil pressure sensor, the one that broke. You saw me holding on camera right before this. Got that. It was just one bolt, held on with one bolt, the camshaft position sensor. And it took a little pry bar. It is, you know, it's got an O-ring on it that holds it in place, along with the seals it in place along with the bolt. So there was also dirt built up around it, so it took a good bit of leverage to get it loose. There was oil, the coolant oil mixture was on this sensor as well. So here I am, you can see it, you can kind of see it, but that's what I was trying to point out there, that the coolant and the water mixture had reached that sensor as well. More likely might have damaged it. Now I'm just gonna remove all these 10mm, these 10mm bolts that are holding down the valley cover. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of them. 10mm fasteners. Whiz them all out, crack them loose first. You see, I'll crack them, and then I'll activate the ratchet to just back them all the way through. Alright, y'all, so we got the valley cover off.
And what do we have? So this block is obviously used, but this oil and water coolant mixture is actually from me rotating the engine. It's been on its side and back, so it's not definitely the coolant was mixing with the oil, so it's a bad sign. But I don't see any issues with the crank. Not crank, camshaft. Camshaft lobes. I don't see any severe scarring, so that's a good sign. But I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the rocker, removing the valve covers to access the rocker arms. So we're gonna get those off and get this head removed.
So there was only two more of the 8mm valve cover fasteners bolts that I had to remove. I had already removed two before I took those spark plugs out, and I realized that they were still inside the cylinder head. So I only had two more to whiz out. Once these two, there's only four 8mm bolts holding this valve cover gasket on. Once they're loosened, you can just simply lift it straight off. It's not hard to get off at all whatsoever. There was also oil along the gasket surface, which also helped it come off, so that was a plus. Once you get off the valve cover on the passenger side, same way on the driver's side, four bolts, 8mm fasteners, whiz them all out, lift the valve cover straight off.
All right, y'all. So I got these valve covers off, and these valves are fucked. Boy, look at this shit here. So it might have been sitting. I know this oil is from me rotating it. That grease. It's grease now. It's not really oil because the water's in it. Before I take these rocker rail off, take the rocker arms out, I'm gonna rotate the crank and see if it's just to see all of them actuate rock. I guess you can see if the rock is gonna rock and the roller's gonna roll. But they look pretty bad. So I'm gonna do that just to give it a, before I take them off, just to see them in action.